This is going to be part one of our Shooting Fundamentals series. We're going to talk about stance. I'm going to talk about things like body alignment, positioning, and weight distribution. So in considering shooting, especially for newer shooters, people are very much focused on what's going on up here with the hands, with the eyes, and they overlook the rest of the body. Actually, when we shoot, we are shooting a pointing instrument, right? Handguns, rifles, they're all basically pointing instruments. So mechanical alignment, in other words, the concept of shooting with your whole body is very important, okay? If you look on any static range and watch people shooting, you'll see all kinds of unusual things going on, people fighting themselves mechanically or kind of leaning back on their spine or weird tilts with their arms and their hands. We want to start basically from our foundation up, and that is going to help us actually point the gun well. That is our first reference for aiming the gun, is not our eyes, but the way we point it with our body. Hip alignment is very important, okay? Oftentimes, I'll see people with their lower body pointing in one direction and their upper body pointing in this direction. Where my natural point of aim wants to be here, you're fighting yourself mechanically. So what I like to tell students is get your hips in line with the target. And that would apply not only to a target right in front of you, but if you are transitioning, right, notice my hips are going to shift with the target and be in line with the target I'm engaging. The other thing is that most of the time when people practice on ranges, they're shooting in a very controlled, confined stall. It's very important to take into consideration, especially at the more advanced levels, that movement will become part of your shooting, your ability to move well, point the gun, and shoot at the same time. Same thing is true if I can make an analogy to a quarterback. If you watch football, you'll notice when a quarterback moves and runs and throws the ball, he always tries to get his hips in line, ideally with where he's throwing the ball. The same thing is true with shooting. So this will be sort of our foundation. There are many ways that you can position your feet, all right? Traditionally, instructors say, okay, if you're right-handed, you want to have your right foot slightly back from your left, feet shoulder width apart, otherwise known as a boxer stance. If you've done any kind of martial arts or boxing, you understand what I'm talking about. This gives us a good stable foundation, but it doesn't mean that your feet have to be glued to the ground this way. Depending on what you're doing, you may shift your feet. For example, if I were shooting a round piece of cover, I would actually shift opposite, okay, and have my shooting foot forward. So it really depends on what you're doing. You should consider your lower body fluid. However, it is important that you have a stable foundation and have your body weight distributed well, because if your body weight is not distributed well, what will happen is you will get off balance while you're shooting. And even with a handgun, which has very little recoil, say compared with a shotgun, you'll notice your feet walking back if you don't have your body weight distributed correctly. So I'm going to do a little demonstration on how important it is to have your body weight distributed correctly over your feet. All right, so I'm going to have Max help me out here with a little example. So Max is a little bit smaller frame than I am. I've probably got about 50 pounds on him. And I want to demonstrate the importance of weight distribution. So first of all, let's just confirm something. Max, if you get into a shooting stance and extend your arms towards me, and sort of rock back on your heels slightly, okay, in other words, not over your toes. If I give you a little push like this, it doesn't take much energy at all to knock you off balance, correct?
No.
And the way that would translate in terms of shooting a handgun is as you fired successively, you'd notice your feet walking back, and I'll demonstrate that later. Now, if we distribute our body weight a little differently over our toes, now you have a tremendous amount of stability. So let's go ahead and do that. Good, get yourself set and extend. Now I'm going to lean my whole body weight here on Max, and I'm actually going to push quite hard. And as you can see, I'm no match for him when he is distributing his body weight over his toes. So let's go on to the range and let's just demonstrate that live fire, and you'll see how this kind of translates when you're actively shooting. All right, let's do a little experiment out on the range with body weight distribution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fire 5 rounds. I'm going to purposely position my body weight such that I'm more towards the middle or back of my feet. And you see a lot of people shooting like this, especially they'll be back like this shooting. Let's see what happens, and if you watch my feet, you'll probably see that my body weight is getting rocked back a little bit with every shot. After we do that, then we'll shift our body weight to the forward position and see what the difference is. Probably noticed as I fired successively, I started to rock back a little bit on my feet. And I encourage you to try this, by the way. The only way that we can really know how these things feel and what the difference is to actually do them, obviously safely. All right, now, let me get my weight over my toes a little bit and see if this affords me a little bit more stability. So you'll notice how I'm using my foot that's back, my dominant foot, sort of like a kickstand. That's going to kind of hold me in place here. Okay. So I think it's pretty obvious what the difference is. And this is not only going to apply to static shooting, what I'm doing now, but also if you're moving. For example, if I'm moving forward, I'm going to still want to distribute my body weight over the front of my feet. All right, let's just have a look at this target here. Example number one, I had my body weight sort of back on my heels, and what I did was I just maintained position and let the gun take my body where it wanted to. And basically, my first shot was, I think, that shot, and then you can see 2, 3, 4, 5. They kind of zipped up the target a little bit here, okay? Distance was pretty close. I'd say about 4 yards, 5 yards, if that. Then when I had my body weight forward, this is all 5 shots basically in 1 or 2 holes right here. So like I said, your body positioning is critical to pointing the gun and shooting well. All right, now that we covered the lower body, now let's just talk briefly about the upper body, okay? And this falls into the realm of personal preference and opinion, but I'm just gonna say it how I feel, because I've sort of changed my shooting, evolved my shooting over the years. Now, quite a few years ago, when I started getting formal training on shooting, this was kind of the accepted stance, right? You'd have the gun down, you'd get your shoulders way up and kind of stick your butt out and squat down like this. I found that to be problematic for many reasons. Number one, it's not a position from which you can be very mobile. In other words, if you're talking about moving, changing elevation, all that, it's a very, very static position. And the other problem is that you'll notice what happens with my eyes. Instead of looking out of the front of my eyes, I'm looking out of the upper third. And human beings do not like to look out of the upper third of their eyes. They like to look straight on. So this is one of those things I think that fell into law enforcement training, military training, and over the years, they got some influence from competition shooting where people are always trying to be the most mechanically efficient as possible, which is a little bit more of a straighter stance, eyes looking forward, body weight forward, head slightly forward, but as you can see, it's quite a bit different than that, okay? So that's how I feel about the upper body. I want to not have excess tension in my neck and my shoulders, and I want my eyes to be looking forward. So I tend to prefer a more, shall we call it, a more vertical, straight up and down stance.